Good morning, Abundant Life Church. This is Pastor Chris. As you can see, it's a different background. I'm not in the office. This is my living room here in Grass Valley. It's a Sunday afternoon. My wife is off at the ladies' tea, to tell you how long ago this was filmed. And I really had nothing to do, so I thought, let's get a jump on the week here. Sitting on a comfortable couch. I've got the football game going over there where you can't see. So life is good. And what we're going to talk about today is Romans chapter 7, verses 7 down through 25. The Hubble telescope for years was famous as being one of the most expensive mistakes ever. This thing cost hundreds of millions of dollars, and it didn't work. And it was a good way for people to point at government waste and say, oh, look at that. They've got this telescope. It's absolutely pointless. They've spent all that money. It turns out one little mirror wasn't adjusted properly. When they figured that out and they got this little mirror on the telescope adjusted, it worked fantastic, and it gave us images we've never been able to see before. Once it was fixed, it worked great. In today's passage, Paul talks about why the law of Moses didn't work. What do you mean it didn't work? Well, was the law broken? Or was the problem that it wasn't being used right? Or was it something else entirely? Now, as Christians, as Gentiles, we were never under the law in the first place. And so we tend to view the law as this silly, old-fashioned set of ideas that just aren't going to fly anymore. You can't eat bacon, you can't do this or that, you can't wear certain types of fabric together. It all seems rather silly to us. But here's the thing. The law was given by God. The law wasn't the problem. The whole system may not have worked, but the issue wasn't the law itself. What we're going to look at is what the problem really was. And this is what Paul goes on to explain in this passage. He tries to explain why the old way didn't work and just where exactly the fault was. Look at verse 7. What shall we say then? Is the law sinful? Certainly not. Nevertheless, I would not have known what sin was if it had not been for the law. For I would not have known what coveting really was if the law hadn't said, you shall not covet. Now, first we need to see the purpose of the law. The law was what a lot of people made the mistake of thinking. The problem was a lot of people made the mistake of thinking that the law could do more than it really could. What could it do? It could point our sins out. That's it. The law was only designed to point our sins out. The law was not made to save people, and it wasn't designed to remove people's sins. All it did was point the sins out. If you go in and let's say you get your knee x-rayed, all right, is that x-ray going to heal your knee? No, that's not the point of the x-ray. All the x-ray does is point out where the problem is. Does that mean that x-rays are bad? No, the law wasn't bad. It's just that we need to understand it was only designed to show us where sin was. All right, now let's look at verses 8 down through 11. But sin, seizing the opportunity afforded by the commandment, produced in me every kind of coveting. For apart from the law, sin was dead. Once I was alive apart from the law, but when the commandment came, sin sprang to life and I died. I found that the very commandment that was intended to bring life actually brought death. For sin, seizing opportunity afforded by the commandment, deceived me, and through the commandment put me to death. What Paul is saying here is, if we go back to our image of the x-ray, an x-ray just points out the problem. It doesn't cure the problem. But if you never go in and get the x-ray, you may not know you had a problem at all. You may just be going through life just happy as all get out, not realizing there's a problem there that an x-ray will show you. The law was meant to point out where our problems were, what people weren't supposed to do. But even that caused problems, because when you tell someone what they can't do, then what do they want to do? Yeah, that very thing. They didn't even think. If you have a little kid in a room surrounded by toys, he's going to ignore most of them until another little kid comes in there and starts playing with a toy. Then guess what? That's what he wants. It's the same way when the law tells us don't commit that sin. Well, I wasn't going to until you mentioned it. All right, now let's look at verses 12 through 13. You can see where the problems are starting to spring up with the system here. Verse 12, so then the law is holy, the commandment is holy, righteous, and good. But did that which is good then become death to me? By no means. Nevertheless, in order that sin might be recognized as sin, it used what is good to bring about my death, so that through the commandment sin might become utterly sinful. Again, this isn't the law's fault. The law just showed people what they needed to change. But rather than actually changing, people made up excuses to make it seem like their sins weren't really sins at all. They were trying to justify and cover up their sin. Would doing that make them closer or even farther from God? Okay. So the system that was supposed to draw people to God wasn't doing that. The Pharisees taught that you could take enough possessions with you and consider that your home, and then you can travel on the Sabbath. Okay, that didn't really work. It was a way of getting around the Sabbath. I love when on an old episode of The Simpsons, Homer Simpson wanted to go on a diet, and his theory was he should eat rice cakes, and as long as something was on a rice cake, he could eat it. He was putting hot fudge on rice cakes. He was putting slices of pizza on rice cakes. Did that make him fatter or thinner? Yeah. This is how it was with the law. The law is not the problem. The problem is, well, frankly, it's us. The law wasn't the reason the system wasn't working. People were. If people would just change and keep the law, then everything would be fine, right? Well, maybe not. Look at verses 15 down through 23 now. In verse 15, if I can find it here, it says, I don't understand what I do. For what I want to do, I do not do. But what I hate, I do. And if I do what I do not want to do, I agree that the law is good. As it is no longer I myself who do it, but it is sin living in me. For I know that good itself does not dwell in me, that is, in my sinful nature. For I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. For I do not do the good I want to do, but the evil I don't want to do, this is what I keep on doing. Now, if I do what I do not want to do, it is no longer I who do it, but it is sin living in me that does it. So I find this law at work. Although I want to do good, evil's right there with me. For in my inner being, I delight in God's law, but I see another law at work within me, waging war against the law of my mind and making me a prisoner of the law of sin that is at work within me. People don't keep the law. Even when we try, we always end up failing. We want to, we have good intentions, but we sin. If the Apostle Paul says he struggles with trying to be good, okay, what chance do we have? This is the Apostle Paul. He's pretty high up there, isn't he? And if he can't do it, what chance do we have of doing it? The system is not going to work. But obviously, the law isn't to blame. We are. So at least we know whose fault it is. But it's still not working. We need a different system. We need one that's actually going to help us. What will help us? Tune in next time and you'll find out. Until then, have a great day.